Your 8-minute question and answer period will now begin. Was there any unexpected negative impact or externality related to your projects?
That's a really good question. There wasn't really anything negative that happened from our project or as a result of our project because we do pre-plan everything so carefully. Um, the only thing that I could maybe put in there is that because we did travel into communities so much, it had a bit of a negative impact on mine and some of the other students' summers because we did have to go into isolation before and after our trips. But as far as any effects on participants, there's nothing that I can think of that would have affected them negatively. But I'll pass it over to Megan to see if there's anything that she'd like to add.
Nope. Nope. That's awesome, Andrew. Thank you.
Explain what tools your team uses to measure impact.
So our team, when we first meet with the community, we identify all of the goals and all of the needs that we are trying to meet through our projects. And so as the project progresses, we identify whether or not our project is successful based on if we are accomplishing these goals and helping the community with the overall needs and goals that they set for their own goal for their own community, at the beginning of our conversations with them.
How does your team define success?
So success is very hard to define because it is different for every individual and every community that we work with. We never go into a community or a conversation with a community with a predetermined solution or outcome for what we're hoping to accomplish in that community. And because of this, our projects range quite a bit, and what is determined to be successful or not also ranges depending on what that individual community's goals are. And so it's not for us to determine whether they're successful or not. It's actually, it's up to them to determine whether the project is a success. Sometimes the project is as simple as just learning how to better market or brand an individual entrepreneur's product. And sometimes it's as complex as establishing food security and economic development for thousands of people. And so it's not even something that we can define based off of a few weeks or months. Our project is long-term. And so for some of the bigger aspects of our project, defining that success will also be long-term.
What accomplishment from the last year are you most proud of?
That's a really good question. There's so many things that come to mind. The first one that I initially think of is that we've actually expanded from 3 First Nations to 31 First Nations during COVID. And I think that's a really important point to make, is that it was all during COVID and that we were able to grow this much. A lot of times when we're working with communities, the way that we begin to work with additional communities is based off of them sharing their own experiences with us and telling more First Nations individuals about the work that we're doing. And so for them to be, these 3 communities that we initially began with, for them to be talking about our team and our projects and sharing with more people that they know across the country, that I think speaks volumes to our work and just the relationships that we form with each individual community. So to have great relationships with 31 communities across Canada is probably the biggest accomplishment I think we have to date.
And I think just to add to that, another big accomplishment for us is we built 4 greenhouses and 3 aquaponics facilities this year during COVID. Building 1 greenhouse is a huge accomplishment. So being able to expand to building multiple things and developing these communities during a pandemic is a huge accomplishment for our team.
Do you have an exit strategy for your projects?
Yeah, so similarly to our project in Zambia, we have committed 10 years to this project and we have 9 years left to go. And so the way that each of our projects works is that we focus heavily on the train the trainer method and that model. So that way we're constantly passing on knowledge to the people that we're working with to make sure that they can establish the project for themselves and that it'll be successful for years after we've left. And to do this, we also make sure that we are constantly going into communities and identifying key champions that will head these projects and be able to maintain them for long after we're there. So we go in with as much knowledge as we have, but then we also source external partners and experts in all of the fields that we're not experts in. So that way we can provide them with all of the knowledge and expertise that they will need to be successful for years and decades after our team's no longer needed.
How do you measure the long-term impact your projects have on beneficiaries?
So, like I said previously, we go into communities and we identify their goals with them and in conversations with them. And so, just as an example, some of the main goals that we've heard them say over the past year is that they need food security and economic development. And to determine if this is a successful project or not, it'll be measured once we've achieved these goals. And so for a great example for this is our aquaponics facilities that we're in the process of building currently. So these 3 nations that we're building aquaponics in, they said, okay, we want to establish food security, but we also need economic development, job creation, and income generation within our communities. And so to do this, we're starting on a small scale with a training-sized aquaponics facility in 3 different nations. But then over the next few years, we're conducting several feasibility studies to establish hopefully a commercial sized aquaponics industry within their communities. And so if we do meet this goal of commercialization with aquaponics, that's when for this specific project, we will know that we've been successful. Because we have now met not only the initial goal of education and food security, but we're meeting long-term goals of economic development, job creation, and income generation.
How are your projects funded?
Our projects are funded through various sources. You'll see me laughing because I have been heading our grant writing for the past year. We're constantly looking for different sources of funding from external partners, and within this past year, we've developed quite large partnerships with a few different organizations, some of them being financial institutions, and they support us with in-kind contribution and also financial contribution. And we're constantly looking for new partners to help in both areas, in kind and financial contribution.
I also think it's important to note that with those partnerships with the financial institutions, we actually received $850,000 this year in support of these projects. So that's a big win for our team.
Yeah, definitely.
Your time has now expired. Thank you, Nationals-Lambton College.